Greetings, my friends, and welcome back to Mike Allen from Chicagoland. I have returned to the town of Dixon, Illinois, Ronald Reagan's boyhood home from 1920 to 1933. About to head not too far from here and check out his boyhood home. Standing currently in front of the statue that I portrayed in last week's video of Ronald Reagan in 1950, sitting on horseback during a parade through town here. So just wanted to come back and check out his boyhood home this time, and I hope you come and join me. Let's get started. So spoiler alert, I am going to be posting in next week's video my visit to Ronald Reagan's birthplace, which is in the nearby town of Tampico, Illinois. Just came from there, and I can't wait to show that to the YouTube audience. And before we go any further, as I try to mention in all of my videos dealing with political figures, I do not discuss politics on my channel, nor do I get into talking about policies of those said politicians. There's plenty of YouTube channels out there that do handle that sort of content, and you're welcome to go check those out if you'd like, but that's not going to be here on this channel. And right along the busy Galena Avenue here is Ronald Reagan's boyhood home and visitor center. So let's get inside and check it out. Showing tours are in this direction, so let's head up there and see what this place has to offer. There's the sign out in front of his house now that talks about his family and the time that they lived here. Right next to the house is a statue of the Gipper himself, admiring corn kernels, and I believe some people have actually put some spare change in there, as I thought I saw a penny in his hand. This was erected in 1988 when he was still president, and it talks about the agricultural history of Illinois, and seemed appropriate for Reagan to be admiring the kernels of corn in his hand. Now when you arrive, they do want you to go to the visitor center next door, as I believe this is a guided tour, which honestly really isn't my pace, but I want to visit this place, so I will abide by the rules and do the guided tour. Inside the visitor center now, and here's a picture of Ronald Reagan as a lifeguard. And
just sits and
talks about the
when they went to Ireland,
many people that he rescued while as a lifeguard. And this story says that he saved 77 people during his 7 summers as a lifeguard. Here's Ronald Reagan during his broadcast days. Started off as a sportscaster. And then here is Ronald Reagan representing the Screen Actors Guild of Hollywood against claims of communism within the SAG in 1947. And this was information about how he got the name the Gipper, as George Gipp and Newt Rockney's All-American, giving his lifelong nickname the Gipper. Here's a picture of Ronald Reagan on the Eureka College football team in 1927. Picture of Ronald Reagan's mom and dad, Jack and Nelle. A picture of the young Reagan with his hand on his chin, which is something he was known for in his early childhood. 1987, a delegation of people from Dixon presented this quilt to Ronald Reagan while he was president, showing a lot of different places here around town. Here's a picture of Ronald Reagan and his final trip to Dixon in October of 1990, tossing a football at Dixon High School wearing a Letterman's jacket. There's a smaller statue of Reagan on his horse from 1950.
They moved into this house on South Hennepin Avenue. It was one of 5 homes they would occupy during their 17 years in Dixon. This is their second home, located at 338 West Everett Street. In his autobiography, Ronald mentioned both homes and his experiences at many places in the area, such as Lowell Park. Ron and Neil both attended South Central School in Dixon, which is now a Smithsonian affiliate museum, showcasing exhibits like Ronald's classroom. This is Ronald's classroom, restored to the period. On arrival at the home in Dixon, The President and First Lady were greeted by Calvin Covert, then chairman of the Restoration Foundation. The President was given a key to the home and then went inside for a tour. After the tour, which included lunch in the dining room, the group left the home to review the birthday parade. The birthday celebration was complete with a cake and the traditional birthday song.
Like Carl Sandburg, I also remember those Depression years. Times were tough, but what I remember most clearly is that Dixon held together. Our faith was our strength. Our teachers pointed to the future. People held on to their hopes and dreams. Neighbors helped neighbors. We knew, our brother Moon and I, our mother and father, Nelle and Jack, saw to that. Saw that we knew we would overcome adversity and that after the storm, the stars would come.
Right between the visitor center and Reagan's house was the field where Reagan and all the neighborhood kids would play football. Call this Gipper Field.
On the walls in this home when we bought it. We carefully scraped off every layer. We shipped a scrapbook to the White House. We shipped the other scrapbook, identical scrapbook, out to his brother Moon in San Diego, California. Boys got on the phone, and within 17 minutes they identified which layer of wallpaper was on the wall in every room. We had it duplicated. You're going to see the exact same wallpaper that was on the walls. When we bought it, it was a dual renter. It had two front doors. And that's because in 1941, one of the largest bomb-making factories left over from World War II is standing 10 miles south of here in a cornfield. And we had thousands of women in 1941 move into Dixon looking for apartment buildings. They were going to work in that factory 7 days a week, 3 shifts a day. All right, this is not real brick. That's asphalt tar paper. It's got a brick pattern printed on it. So it's not real brick. We peeled that off real easy. But anyway, that's what we had a bathroom off the back porch. You can see the bathroom window right there. This window is in a closet. I'll show you that when we get up in the master bedroom. This window, we have 3 diamond windows in the attic. That is the symbol that it's a Montgomery Ward's home. Look for diamond windows in the attic, and that's Montgomery Ward's signature. That's the way they signed their work. That's the brand of the house. So. And they put windows in really odd places, and that's because in 1891, the power grid had not been completed in the whole United States. You might be selling a home to a guy that doesn't have electricity. So they put windows in closets and all the dark areas so you could actually see what the heck you're looking at. So the gentleman just said what's original in this house. We have 2 original items in this house. That rocking chair. The Reagan boys sat in that rocking chair many, many hours listening to a brand new invention that Mr. Wade Hall owned in Dixon, a radio. It had just been invented. And the Reagan boys wanted to hear the Cubs and the White Sox lose another game, so they would go to Mr. Hall's house. They would fight for the rocking chair because Mr. Hall only had 2 chairs in his listening room. And the Reagan boys would arm wrestle on the floor, really wrestle, or they would flip a coin to win that chair.
Here's the rocking chair. That's one of the original pieces in this house.
Windows and closets are a horrible idea. The sunlight is the problem. That's why we don't put windows in closets. The sunlight will destroy the color of your clothing. So you have to put a very dark shade on the window and make sure you pull it down, or the next day all of your clothing's going to start changing colors on you. Now, why did Jack rent the most expensive house in Dixon, his first house? Because Jack signed a contract to be half owner of that brand new business Mr. Pitney was moving from Tampico to Dixon. Jack was he wanted to look like a business owner, so he rented the most expensive house in Dixon. Jack only had an 8th grade education. He signed that contract to become half owner, but he didn't understand it. He couldn't understand half the legal jargon that was in there. So a friend of his stopped by one day and said, "Jack, go get that contract that you signed. I'll tell you exactly how you're going to become half owner." The guy read the contract and he shook his head at Jack and he goes, "You are not going to like this. You rented the most expensive house in Dixon, but you're only going to get a half a paycheck for, I don't know how long, but that guy's going to withhold your commission sales money until he collects enough of, every time you sell a pair of shoes, he's going to collect that money until he has enough money collected to purchase half of the business from him." And Jack says, "You mean I rented the most expensive house in Dixon and I'm only going to get half a paycheck?" And that's what it's like. That's what the contract says, Jack. Well, Jack did what Jack always does when he's upset or mad at somebody. He grabbed the keys to the car, he went on a bender, a drunken bender for 6 days. When he returned, Mr. Pitney says, "Where the heck have you been? I'm opening a brand new boot store and you disappear for 6 days? Are you an idiot? Hell, you remember that contract you signed, Jack?" Ripped it right in half. He said, "I will not go into business with a drunkard. That deal is off." And Jack went, "Yay, I get a whole paycheck. I get to live here for a while." I get my commission sales money and I get my regular base pay. So Jack blew a great opportunity to advance the Reagan family. That's President Reagan, Nancy Reagan, and Moon all sitting on the bed in the boys' bedroom. Both boys shared the same bed because this house was deathly cold in the wintertime. The boys said they'd sit up in bed in the morning and they could pretend they were smoking a cigarette, and when you blew out, you could see your breath in that bedroom. Moon burned his hand in a cooking accident. That's why he's wearing a silver nitrate mitt. We called him Napoleon all that day. They shared the same bed. You betcha. They would have died in the wintertime without body heat. Is that right? The heating was absolutely atrocious in this home. It was non-existent basically.
They're boys.
President Reagan made a comment about the rug you're standing on. He said, "Hey, Moon, look at that rug." He says, "Do you remember ours? Ours sure was a holy rag." He says, "They did a good job getting the right rug for this bedroom." So he did make a comment about the rug while he was sitting on the bed. But anyway, this wall was full of 25 different college pennants all over this wall. So we decided, well, let's decorate the room with college pennants. That very bath when he was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. So that is the original bathtub with the house. When President Reagan came through on his 73rd birthday, he leaned into the bathroom, turned around to everybody in the hallway, and he said, "That room is exactly like I remembered it. It's perfect." And that's because the bathtub was the same bathtub that he took a bath in. Right here.
This is where the Reagan boys'
She had a
parents stayed.
And she was going to sub-rent
This
that bed
was
out
no
in a
closet
week
in
or
this
a
room.
month if Jack ever died.
Bathroom I just showed used to be the closet for this bedroom.
The only bedroom upstairs does not have a closet, and that's because they were born in 1883. They could fit most of their daily clothing right there in those chest of drawers. When they were children, they only had 2 sets of clothing. They would wear one for 5 days and the other for 5 days. And the clothing was not cotton. Cotton was way too expensive for all of the poor people in America after the Civil War. The price of cotton on our stock market was higher than gold. And it took the South 45 years to get the price of cotton down low enough that poor people could finally buy cotton clothing for their children.
So what were they made out of?
Burlap sacks from the grocery store. They bought 50 pounds of coffee, 50 pounds of sugar, 50 pounds of flour, 50 pounds of everything. And when those bags were empty, they would cut them up and make clothing for their children. The quilt on the end of this bed was given to us in 1988. You can see it's been a little bit sun damaged. Faded. It's quite faded. We've since applied ultraviolet light filtering to all the glass in this house. And it's given to us in 1980 by a bunch of gray-haired ladies. They came to us right down the street at the First Christian Church. They said, "We have a quilt making club at the First Christian Church." That's the same church Ronnie and Nelle attended. And by the way, their church is this church in a big conglomerate owns Eureka College. So when the daughter of the minister went to Eureka College, Reagan followed her to college, and he was attending the same church that Eureka College owns the college. So the college helped put the Reagan boys through college. Ronald Reagan willed his mother's Bible to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, and is the first item you will view when you start touring the Presidential Library. It's going to be, you're going to enter a room. The room's going to start out with a great big picture of the Dixon Arch over Galena Avenue from 1920. And Ronald Reagan named that whole room the Dixon Room.
There's a portrait of Abraham Lincoln here at the bottom of the stairs.
Parlor room, this is where funerals used to take place. They're no longer, when the funeral business got up and running, the funeral business stole the word parlor. Now they're called funeral parlors. And that's because parlors, it started in the house, or funerals started in the house. Now the Reagan kicked everybody out of this room too. She said, "If I see you boys sit, stand, talk, do anything in my parlor room, I'll paddle your little butts." President Reagan. This is the room of the making of the great communicator, Ronald Reagan. You're standing in his classroom. Let me explain. Nelle Reagan kicked everybody out of here. She wanted this room pristine clean for 2 reasons. The The first one is she was a sought-after Christian counselor for women. And when women in Dixon had a crisis, like they caught their man with another woman, they would immediately come to Nelle in tears and say, could you please tell me what to do about this situation? Or they would come to her with a child dying in a hospital, or whatever the crisis was. Nelle was sought after because she really knew the Word of God, and she could use examples of other women in the Bible and try to help them out through the situation. Second thing is, Nelle Reagan, with an 8th grade education, she got a job teaching at a men's business college in Dixon, Illinois here. So now she's Professor Nelle. They saw her talent for this one course that those businessmen had to take. It was called elocution. Do you know what you would be learning if you took a college course in 1920 called elocution?
Speaking, speech.
How to speak in public. Now, all right, February 6, 1984. President Reagan couldn't wait to set one foot in this room. He was like a little kid in a china shop. I gave him the keys. He came in. He didn't help Nancy Reagan take off her hat, coat, gloves, scarf. It was 7 below zero outside. He was not a gentleman. No, he was 10 years old in his mind when he walked in here. He's no longer 73-year-old president of the United States. I'm 10 years old again. The wallpaper is the exact same wallpaper. The furniture looks perfect. It's in the right place. He couldn't wait to get 1 foot into this room that he was never allowed to sit, stand, talk, or anything. When he stepped in, he, sorry, Mom, dropped down to one knee. He started feeling our tiles, looking for his secret hiding place from his older brother, Moon. Moon was a bit of a thief, and Moon would steal some of his pennies. When Reagan had 10 pennies, you better not touch that. That guarantees him 4.5 hours at the Dixon Theater on a Saturday matinee. Yeah, you got 2 movies in the golden age of Hollywood. The first movie was called The Bonus Feature. That is why all the actors and directors and everybody were called B-movie actors. The bonus movie actors. We moved this library table. It was sitting dead center in the middle of the room. That's where Moon told us it sat. We moved it immediately when Reagan went over to the Dixon High School and he gave a big speech and they threw a big party for him for his birthday. We opened the general public. We've been open to the general public ever since February 6th, Ronald Reagan's 73rd birthday. And we've never taken a dime from any U.S. taxpayer, and we are so proud of that, and Reagan would be really proud of us. President Reagan grabbed a whole handful of our fresh popcorn in this room. Whole room smelled like popcorn when he walked in here. Shoved it in his mouth. Secret Service come flying out of the kitchen. They said, don't you dare swallow. We didn't have time to test that popcorn. If somebody's poisoned it, you'll drop dead in 6 minutes, Mr. President. Don't you swallow that popcorn. You're going to spit it out. Reagan couldn't talk to me. His cheeks were packed full of popcorn. He took a big handful of it. He chewed the popcorn. He looked right at him. He swallowed. He says, it could use some salt. We didn't salt the popcorn because it was just a prop. All right, then he went over and he sniffed the couch, and he said to the curator, that couch does not smell like our couch. And the curator said, well, what did we do wrong? And he says, President Reagan said, I don't think he did anything wrong. It looks exactly like our couch. My brother and I picked it up. But I want to tell you, is that horsehair underneath there, or is that steel springs supporting the chair? The guy said, steel springs. I couldn't find one with horsehair. And Reagan laughed and he goes, that's also why it doesn't smell like stinky couch. My brother and I would fight over that chair every night after supper. We arm wrestled, we wrestled, or we flipped a coin to win that chair. Loser got stinky couch. And why do we call it stinky couch? Because on a hot summer day, that couch reeked like a dead horse sleeping in a barn. This whole room stunk on a 95-day humid day. It was a terrible smelling piece of furniture.
So it was the first thermostat ever invented to control heat in the house.
Chains tied to ropes. The ropes went through a series of wooden pulleys, and with a 3-inch movement of that chain, you lifted a 30-pound cast iron lid on your furnace called the damper lid. So that's called a damper lid switch. President Reagan, when he walked in here, tried to kill himself a second time. He looked at this beautiful table set exactly like it's set in 1984. We haven't moved a doggone thing there. President Reagan looked at these beautiful plates and he says, my brother and I would like to eat lunch off of these plates, can we? Secret Service said, no way. We haven't had time to test these plates. If there's poison on those plates, Mr. President, you, Nancy, and Moon will all drop dead in 6 minutes after you eat off of those plates. President Reagan said, come on. And they said, Mr. President, why are you fighting us and why are you arguing? Do you have a death wish today? Are you trying to kill yourself while you're in Dixon, Illinois on your 73rd birthday? President Reagan snapped back at him. He got really angry with him. He says, you just made my point. I'm in Dixon, Illinois. This is the safest city for me in all of America. There is nobody going to want to kill me in Dixon, Illinois. He goes, you let me eat off of these plates. If he brings in those 1980 plates, it's going to be the wrong prop for the movie. You got to have the right prop for the scenery. I'm a movie guy, for crying out loud. You can't have 1980 plates in a 1920 home. They said, all right, you can eat off of the plates. And so they all three did. Nancy Reagan sat there. Moon went to that chair. That's because that's where Mom and Dad assigned Moon to sit. And Ronald Reagan went to this chair. That's where Ronald Reagan was assigned to sit. Jack Reagan always sat here. Nelle always sat there. The kitchen sink. I told you indoor plumbing came to this home in 1912. This home was built in 1891. So they didn't tear down the walls, lath and plaster, to hide the pipes in the walls. There they are. They just exposed them. You can hear every flush of the toilet from upstairs while you're doing the dishes. But this is the only sink you got with the first indoor plumbing. The entire sink and the countertop is made of a metal called zinc. Zinc sounds a lot like sink. Well, yeah, that was the first name for the sink, was actually zinc with a Z. My great-granny always told me, put your dirty dishes in my zinc when you're done. And I always thought she was nuts until I got this job. And then I just kind of looked up and said, Granny, you were right. It was called a zinc. This item right here, anybody know what it does?
Toast.
Toast. That's a 4-piece toaster. You have to flip your toast to make sure that when one side's done, you have to flip the other side. I had a 9-year-old girl tell me that was a toaster last summer. How does she know that? You can still buy these. You can, if you're a tent camper and you want to make toast in the morning, you can still buy these. She knew exactly what the item was. Everybody wanted a Hoosier cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
The Hoosier company got a patent on the name Hoosier. They also got a patent on how they made their cabinet, which means nobody can copy their cabinet anywhere in the United States. You can pay a $10,000 patent violation. But the Hoosier company, the very first Christmas, had orders for 12 years. You were going to wait 12 years to get a Hoosier cabinet. We in America don't like to wait for anything. We are the most stinking impatient people in the world. That is why McDonald's is making a fortune of us. We want our food and we want it right now, doggone it. How did we get the replicas of the Hoosier cabinets? Well, thousands of woodworkers, metalworkers sprang up in the 48 states. They started making replicas of the Hoosier cabinet. How did they not get hauled into court for violating the patent that Hoosier company had on it? They made every one of these replicas different. So when you buy one of these in an antique store, a replica of a Hoosier cabinet, you're getting a one-of-a-kind cabinet. There's only one in all of America that looks like yours. They made every one of these different, so when the lawyers would come to the factory, they'd say, I'm not even copying my own pattern, buddy. Can you find 2 cabinets in my factory that look exactly alike? No, you can't. And the judge will throw your case right out of court. We're not copying anybody's cabinet.
So the tour guide was saying that this barn is a replica of what the Reagan family had, and it's on the actual spot where the original barn once stood. Actually had a group from the, I think he said Northern Illinois University, come out and do an archaeological dig, and they found the actual posts where the barn stood, and they built a replica right in that exact location. He was also talking about how Jack Reagan loved to flip Model Ts, and he would put them together in the summer, and then once he was completed, put a for sale sign next to those Model Ts and sell them for a profit. The driveway from that barn back over to the house, this would have been all gravel back in the days when the Reagans lived here. So I appreciate you joining me on this tour through Ronald Reagan's boyhood home here in Dixon, Illinois. If you wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. There's other ways you can help me out in growing the channel. I'll put links down in the description below. I've also, as I mentioned in my video last week, started a Mike Allen from Chicagoland Facebook page. So that link is in the description as well. So please visit my Facebook page and hit the like button. That really helps to grow this community, grow this channel, and just really helps also engage with the audience here. So if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. Anyways, this is Mike Allen from Chicagoland, signing off from Dixon, Illinois. I'll be back next week with another video, but until then, don't you go changing. Currently driving on the Ronald Reagan Memorial Tollway, Interstate 88.